911 Systems here with another tutorial video of the SA951. So this video here is going to pretty much go over your inputs, your ports, your audio outputs, your audio output. There's only one. Sorry. Your inputs, grounds, your monitor switch, PA amplifier switch, what the lights mean, and your programming port on this side. And then of course on the other side there's going to be your programmable outputs. So these would be like where your lights and bells and buzzers and siren and access control systems and stuff like that can interface in. You know, the standard is that, and don't mind the fact that we're missing some screws here. This is on purpose so we can get this cover off quicker when we need to pull the board out to do other videos. So, and you can see your power inputs. You can run up to 12 amps of power in here, or you can do 5 amps on the barrel connector. You do get a 5 amp power supply in the box with this unit. So, this guy here is kind of like everything all in one. So, the SA951 is a tone alert controller, station alert controller, whatever you want to call it, but it does 2-tone decoding, up to 12 sets of 2-tone decodes, with a 13th tone for cancellation. So you can assign a tone that would cancel out the alert system. It's good for like sirens and stuff like that if you're using it for like a tornado siren. And then of course it has the DTMF side. You can put it in DTMF mode where it'll decode DTMF tones and control the different outputs. You know, control your different outputs by DTMF tone. So 2-tone or DTMF or even single tone in tone mode. And then you have the inputs. It has 4 digital inputs here. So you have your inputs and grounds and stuff like that. So the grounds are next to each input and each monitor switch, or the monitor switch, because it makes it simple to just connect a two conductor wire to go out to a button. You know, one side of the button would be your ground, and the other side would be the return, which would send that ground signal back to the input to activate to trigger the activation of the input, whatever may be assigned into programming. So just kind of starting, I'm kind of all over the place, but that's just the way my mind works. Your radio interface port has several functions. You can see there's 9 pins here. It's a DE9 connector or an RS-232 cable. You know, that's how a lot of people think of an old serial port. And I do have a paper right here I'm going to pull down, see if I can do that successfully. So pins 1, which would be the top right pin. So pin 1 right here is going to be your audio out to the radio that's connected, where pin 2 is your audio in. So that would be this pin here. Pin 3 is a push-to-talk signal for the connected radio. If you need to transmit a signal on transpond, this can transmit over your radio, messages and whatnot. Pin 4 right here is going to be your ground. Pin 5 is 12 volts hot. And, you know, the ground and the hot are mostly used to power an external data radio, like the Maxon SD series radios that come with our VHF and UHF kits. But you also may need the ground if for sending your audio from the radio in. You might want to keep that ground there. If everything's on the same ground, you won't notice too much interference, but it's a best practice to always have the grounds linked together. Moving over to pin 6, you're going to get your carrier detect, which is this pin here, the bottom right pin. Carrier detect, there's actually a trigger mode for carrier detect. It's right here. You can see the COR. So what that'll do is if it detects carrier, which is, you know, whenever the radio is receiving a signal and you're hearing it on that channel, that's carrier detect. And that's important. Carrier detect is important for maybe talk group dispatching, where you have no other way to know that there is an alert other than carrier detect, or even possibly voice detect, because we do have audio detect. That's what the audio is here. So it's like a Vox circuit. And the Vox circuit can actually be configured between the accessory pager port, or the audio from either your input and radio interface, because these two run in parallel. So your audio in port, your 3.5 millimeter, and pin 2 are on the same circuit. So it's one or the, you got to use one or the other here, where with an accessory and pager, with your accessory pager port, DIN pin 1 and 6 are your audio jack. So 1 being your audio, and 6, which is this cutout up here, being your ground. Moving along here, the only other thing, so port connection 7 is not connected, so this here is not connected to anything. This here, pin 8, is going to be linked to input 4 for Motorola P25 call alert functionality. So if you have a radio connected to this that has call alert functionality on it, you can set the VIP pin 1 to activate pin input 3, and this would be VIP 2, which would activate input. I think I have that backwards. So this is input 4. This is in parallel with input 4, and this is in parallel with input 3. And this can be VIP 1 or VIP 2. It depends on how you configure your cable. But the manual explains this. The pinout shows you what the inputs are. And then just remember that this pin 9, it runs in parallel with input 3. If the internal jumper, there is an internal jumper in here that has to be in the on position. And that's so you don't cause interference by connecting other radios or whatnot. And then the same thing with this guy here. This pin here is ran in parallel with input 4. So basically any radio that can send the ground signal out can be interfaced into the controller to do activations of the alert system. So sorry for confusing you. Now moving over here to the accessory pager port, we said already that this is the audio. Audio input is this pin here. The second pin, well, that's input 1, and these kind of go in order. So this is 1, 2, 3, and then 4 and 5. So that's a little confusing. So you have your audio here on pin 1, which is the, I guess that'd be the 3 p.m. position. And then the pin 4, which is this like 4 o'clock position, and then pin 5, which is about the 7 o'clock position, are not used. So pins 4 and 5 are not connected to anything. That's this one and this one. So pins 3 is a ground, and that goes into a relay, an external relay, like a pager, amplified charger. And then pin 2, which is down here on the 6 o'clock position, is a ground trigger port. So you can run any type of ground trigger into this and activate an alert. We call it a pager input, but it's also like a 5th input. So you can use it as a 5th input if you need an additional input and you're not using a pager. So that was confusing. I'm sorry for being all over the place with this, but I think it's important to be detailed. Now, as far as PA output, which is this port here that you're seeing, this is all the audio that's switched and coming in from your radios and all that. It's one central output that runs to a PA speaker system. So your radio audio, when in monitor mode, would pass through this system, and it's always decoding if it's decoding tones, and then the audio signal will come out of here and run into your PA system, so you can monitor it at a lower level. And then when there's an alert, it would switch on to what we call live PA mode for a set amount of time, and then that would activate your other things would activate as well. So the live PA is basically the one port that you need to connect the cable to into your speaker system. So basically you can hear your calls and hear your alert audio. Moving over to the program port, this is just a standard USB port. This is only used to program the unit. There's no remote functionality or anything else that can be interfaced into this port. It's just for programming. So we're going to go ahead and... Ooh, I hit the tripod here, sorry. We're going to jump over to this side here. And you can see there are 8 outputs. They are configurable switched outputs. And the reason it's worded like that is because in our video about the PCB board, in a different video in this channel, you can see that you can set each one of these 8 outputs to be 12-volt switch, where 12 volts the left side and ground is the right side. It can be a switched ground, where the left side switches to ground when there's an activation of the relay, or it can be a dry contact. And they're 5-amp relays, so there's 8 5-amp relays in here, and those would be able to control, other devices, automation, door systems, lights, bells, buzzers, bed shakers, pretty much anything, oven shutoff, house siren, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of options there. The lights here correspond to the outputs. So K1 through K8. So it's 1 through 4 and then 5 through 8. And then, there's 1 through 8 here. This is a 12-volt power input that's rated for 12 amps. This is a 12-volt power input rated for 5 amps. You can only use one or the other. Don't try to connect into both. It's just going to overpower the whole system, I believe. I haven't even tried that because I don't want to fry anything. I'm certain it wouldn't fry anything, but it's just the best practice not to connect 2 different DC power sources to one unit. So that being said, you might be thinking, well, how do I know what's set for what and whatnot? Well, if we program your unit, we will provide you, and I'm going to move this out of the way for a second. We provide you with a programming sheet. And this programming sheet will show you what tones the unit is looking for. It's going to show you, pull my screwdriver back over here again. It's going to show you what audio source is the audio coming from. So in this case, it would be coming from the radio. The radio port being the radio. If it's set to radio, it's going to be any audio coming in from this port or from the 3.5 millimeter audio jack. So this particular customer has a SD951EX VHF radio connected here to this port, and it's going to be listening on his frequency for these tones. And you can see that he has, you see the outputs that activate for each set of tones. So for EMS all and EMS duty, he has output 1 activate. But for fire and the chief and the drone, he has output 2 activate. And for countywide alert, he has both of them activate. And you'd be like, okay, so why does he have both activate for countywide alert? Well, this particular customer, if you come down here, see this is your output section. If you come down here to your relay outputs, it'll show you which each one is. He's only got 2 outputs that activate for now. He can add, another 6 whenever he wants to. But 1 is a blue LED light and 2 is a red LED light. So what he's saying, what's going on here is for EMS calls, he has the blue light come on. For fire calls, he has the red light come on. And chief and drone, the red light come on. And then if it's a countywide alert, it'll alternate. It'll have the blue and the red light come on. And then moving down a little further in your output section, you can see here that we show you how long the on time will be. Now this is like a nice chart that we do based on how we've programmed your unit. So this isn't what the programming software looks like. This is just an easy to read chart. And we actually will fill this chart out. Make sure we have all of our settings correct here. Make sure everything looks right. And then we actually go into the programming and we program everything based off of this, because it's a lot easier to do it on here and then go in and program the unit versus the other way. So moving along up top, we talked about the tones that are going to activate. We talked about the fact that the audio source would be the radio on alert. We talked about which outputs would activate. Now let's talk about how the radio alerts for audio and how that works. So for his EMS all and his EMS duty, he has audio file 21 playing. You might be like, well, what the heck is audiophile 21? Well, when you get one of these, on the back of this programming sheet, there is a list of your audio files. So 21 would be house tones. That's the audio file he wanted to play. So your red audio files on this list are going to be like alerts, alert tones, so doorbells and buzzers and fire-specific or EMS-specific noises, where blue is going to be like a female voice speaking. So if you had it go off for, say you have a cops theme because you're running a call with the police, or it's the fire police or something to that effect, and then you could say, after that played, you could have it play audiophile fire police, because yes, you can play 2 audio files per activation. So right now he's just playing the alert audio. He doesn't have any other audio file, and he doesn't for most of his stuff. So you can see you can play an alert file, and then you can play a voice file that plays a specific message. So it could be like beep, 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 engine respond, or burp, burp, engine respond, or whatever the case may be based on how you program your audio files. So radio TX is going to be the third set of audio files. These should always remain 0 on here and in the programming software, unless when this tone activates, say this tone activates, if you need the radio to transmit back on the same frequency that the call was received, then you would put an audio file in here that would say call received or whatever. You would have to create your own audio file and load it on the SD card, which isn't a big deal. But so looking a little further at this, you can see that his controller is in tone mode, which means it's going to do 2-tone and single-tone decoding. I gave it a 0.9% bandwidth, tone bandwidth, which means that the tone can be off frequency by 0.9%. If he has any single tones, which this customer doesn't, but if he had any single tones, the single long tone would have to be at least 4.1 seconds to trigger an activation. Your 2-tone timings, this is the minimum tone length required to activate the system. We set these pretty low because we want an activation pretty prompt when there is an alert. So as long as the first tone is 0.3 seconds or longer, and then a second tone comes in and matches that second tone for 0.3 seconds, that will activate this whole process. If you get multiple activations back to back, it will stack the audio files. Unless, of course, it plays the same audio file, then it would skip it if you have the filter repeat MP3 turned on. So say you have like the same alert tone, but you have different voice messages for each call. You can you would set it so it doesn't play the same beep 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 noise every time, in that dispatch. So within like 5 or 10 seconds, they have to be within 5 or 10 seconds to each other before it'll not filter it anymore. And then it would go on and play your voice files, and hopefully you would have different voice files for the different tones, because that's the whole idea behind the controller. You can see the PA audio on timer. This would be live PA is what it's called in the software settings. And we have this set to 90 seconds. So if this system was just turned off and it was just in standby mode and a call came out, the call would activate, it would play your MP3, it would turn on your lights, it would listen to the radio audio, and then it would stay on the radio for 90 seconds, and then everything would reset. So we're going to move down here a little further, and you can see here that down here we have your alternate triggers. Now these are your inputs, your DIN port, which is your pager accessory port, and then radio carrier detect, and then radio, and I know it says radio, but this could be set to DIN or radio, so it's just defaulted to radio on this programming sheet. It's not on though. You can see that everything is turned off, so you can see no outputs, no audio plays, which means in effect it's off. But you could turn this on, and like if a carrier detect was detected like talk group dispatching, it could turn on your radio, it could turn on different outputs for different lights, it can play different alert files just like anything else. Your pager, if you connect a pager or an accessory to your DIN port, right, it doesn't have to be a pager, it could be a weather radio, it could be some other device that has a relay that closes on alert, or if you have the Vox set, you can actually set the Vox up And you can say, hey, if Vox is detected, go to the pager audio, turn on relays, whatever, play audio file this, and then it would go to live PA for 90 seconds until it resets. So this is kind of how the programming chart works. Let me talk about the inputs. I'm sorry. So this customer has some manual buttons that he can press to activate his alert systems, or his alert system in the firehouse from the control room or the chief's office. So he has like button 1 is set up for fire. So if there's a fire call, they can press that button and it would turn the radio on, and then it wouldn't turn any lights on, but it would play alert audio through the speaker. So it'd do a beeping tone, and then it would play message 66. So it's going to do 2 long beeps, and then it's going to play fire units respond. And then you can see it has an emergency button for the front ramp. And if there was an emergency, then it would play audio 10 and 95. So 10 would be 3 DTMF beeps, which is like beep, 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 but like a touch tone phone beep. And then it would play audio 95, which is in-house emergency reported, is what it would say over the speaker system. So this is the programming chart. If we program it, you get this. If we don't program it, you still get the same paper. You get the flash drive, and the flash drive has the software, the drivers. It has the Excel file of this sheet. And if you're going to program it yourself, we highly recommend you that you go in here and fill out how you want these tones to function. You know, which audio files you want it to play, which relay should activate, and fill all this out. Because when you go into the software, it's a terminal program. It's not a graphical user interface. It doesn't have checkboxes and drop downs and stuff like that. Everything is done by, menu prompts. So, press 1 to change your tones, and then you want to change your DTMF tones or your 2 tones. You press 2 for 2 tones. Then from there, you can press 0, 1 to change tone 1. So everything is done pretty much with the keyboard. So it's really simple to do once you have this sheet filled out. So that's kind of an overview of how this works, how you connect things to it. This is like the big long video. I'm going to do some short like sectional videos that just go over like connecting a button or interfacing your radio. So you'll see all these videos will be on the channel, and I've got about 15 people that have their pre-orders are on the way to them right now. So this video is pretty important for them. The QR code that you scanned should have brought you to these videos as well. So thanks for watching. I know it was kind of long, but it's important that you understand how this works. Now, one other thing I didn't mention, and I'll just show you real quick since we're here. These are the mounting brackets. So they slide in. To get these in here, you have to take one of the covers off. But you can slide them all along this bottom rail. So you can get this mounted up on a wall or however you want to mount it. Obviously our logos like this, we recommend mounting it this way, because then you can have like some of your wires coming off this side, some of the wires coming in this side. And then we have other customers who have said they're going to just take it out of the case. They're going to pull the circuit board out of the case, and they're going to mount the circuit board in like a wall mounted like NEMA enclosure and just run all the wires up into that enclosure. That way everything's secured and nobody can disconnect anything. And it's not a bad idea. So we might actually have a version of this that comes in a NEMA enclosure where all the wires run up in that, so it can be secured and you can't just pull the wire out. But obviously this should be mounted in a secure location, an IT closet or something that not everybody has access to. But not every department has that, and we understand, so we'll work with you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to contact us by email, support@911systemsllc.com. Thanks for watching.